mentioned a few names there. Just in my opinion, in an ideal world, I'd be throwing everything I had at James Ward-Prowse. Do Newcastle in the next week or so need to go out and try and sign another midfielder?
The focus this month needs to be just adding one or two more bodies in the middle of the park, and I think Bruno's injury only sort of speeds up that process. I know, we were talking off camera that, they're midway through this window. They haven't made a move. Howe insists that they aren't bidding for players as of yet, and they're it's purely a watching brief. But I think any targets that they did have in the middle of the park, there's a little bit more urgency now. Obviously, we don't know how long Bruno is going to be out, but you'd think even if it's 3 or 4 weeks, it's 3 or 4 weeks that they don't want to be playing catch up. So really, really, disappointing to see him go off. I think, the only one positive you can probably take from it is that he managed to play on for a good 20 to 30 minutes before finally asking to come off. I know Howe said in hindsight that he probably should have brought him off earlier, but hopefully not too serious. We know that the club are, sending him for scans this afternoon. So hopefully, it's a sprain rather than any sort of ligament damage or anything like that.
I thought what was positive from that Bruno injury was the fact that Newcastle didn't really seem to suffer too much when he went off. Longstaff moved into the centre, St. Maximin came on. And I thought they did all right. Of course, you don't want to ever lose a player of Bruno's quality, but they didn't seem to suffer as much as I think most people feared they would do.
Oh, 100%. And look, I don't think, St. Maximin would ever come out and say this, but it's a huge opportunity for him now. And we've been talking the last couple of weeks of how does he get back in the team? Do you move Joelinton? And I think Howe's now going to be forced into that decision. So it's up to St. Maximin to really grasp the opportunity and make sure he reclaims that spot on the left. But I don't think it changes too much in terms of the start 11. Obviously, you don't want to lose a player of Bruno's quality, as you mentioned, but a midfield three of Joelinton, Willock and Longstaff and Maxi in the attack, Newcastle could be in a worse situation. But I just think it just adds more pressure on, that question we keep saying about how much depth they've got in the middle. And look, Howe knows this. Howe's came out and said, he knows that they're light in the middle of the park. And, no doubt they were already looking for someone in the middle. I know that, a lot of the rumours that Newcastle have been linked with at the middle are all, they all seem to be central midfielders. You've got Maddison, Tielemans, Ruben Neves, Milinkovic-Savic. So I think, as I said, it just speeds up this process, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made the move earlier, as soon as they know, how long Bruno's going to be out.
You mentioned a few names there. Just in my opinion, in an ideal world, I'd be throwing everything I had at James Ward-Prowse. I think absolutely superb. That's not going to happen because, Southampton have picked up form. I think he'll want to stay at Southampton to make sure they're safe. And then in the summer, he might look elsewhere. And of course, he's got the chance to maybe lift a cup with Southampton. What a way that would be to go out before you move on to bigger and better things. And of course, he would cost a heck of a lot of money. You mentioned Ruben Neves. Tielemans played obviously for Leicester, didn't have the best of games, but as we said on last week's podcast, when things aren't going very well in general at a club, sometimes it's hard to push the team forward. People asking in the comments there about Neves. Would you see him fitting in at Newcastle? If that deal did come off, or is there any interest in Neves?
I think when the Neves stuff came out over the weekend, I saw a lot of people downplaying it or, saying that they don't think he'd be a very good fit. I know that he's got, a bit of previous with Newcastle fans after some comments he made about them playing long balls in the past. But fantastic player. I think he would be a very, very, very good addition to this team. He's still very young. He's sort of a heartbeat of that team. He's got sort of Shelvey-esque passing skills. So I was quite surprised to see the reaction on social media when he was first linked on Friday or Saturday. I think you look at the other options. I think Tielemans, yes, didn't have a good game against Newcastle, but he'd be a fantastic signing. I think maybe that's one they do in the summer if they can get it, done on a pre-contract. It would be interesting to see whether Leicester are ready to sell at this moment in time, given their current position. And then I think, the other name I mentioned, Milinkovic-Savic, a lot of talk about him potentially coming from Lazio. I think one thing I'll say on that is, when I worked for the national newspapers and covered all clubs rather than Newcastle, he was a name that came up every transfer window. It was Manchester United are in for him and Chelsea are in for him, and then the next window it was Arsenal. So I think I'd have a bit of caution on that one. It sounds a bit like agent talk, especially when you consider that Lazio are probably going to want 50 or 60 million for his signing. I don't think that's sort of an outlay Newcastle are going to be, doing too much of this window. So Neves is probably the one that makes sense. Should Wolves, look to sell him, you'd probably be able to get him for around 30 million, which I think represents, good business in this market. So, they've got options. We've named 4 or 5 there. I'm sure behind the scenes, they're working on a couple more as well. So interesting to see which type of player they go for later this month.